Interesting thing about the time he was born is this. The world was embroiled in a serious conflict. That was a time when the World War II was at its peak, and so there was a lot of disruptions the world over. He got married in 1973 to Ida Onyango Oyo Odinga. She's popularly known as Mama Ida Odinga, and she's now 71 years of age. And their children, they have Fidel Odinga, unfortunately deceased. Then we have Raila Odinga Jr., Winnie Odinga, Rosemary Odinga. In 1974, he got into his former employment with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, where he worked for 4 years in the Department of Analysis until 1978, when he was promoted to the position of Deputy Director. And he worked until he resigned in 1982, and he was accused of plotting to overthrow the government of President, the late Daniel Arap Moi. That was back in 1982. We all remember the August coup of 1982. And this is, a lot of analysts will tell you that this time marked the death of the Kenyan economy, because the political class concentrated so much on consolidating their political power base instead of putting Kenya's economy at the forefront. And this is a time where a lot of them will tell you that the Kenyan economy started performing fairly bad. And in 1982 to 1988, he was imprisoned without trial. He was not alone. There were about 15 people who were imprisoned without trial, at least the ones that are in the public domain, and they are known. And that was quite a tough moment for them there. And in 1991, he flees the country to seek refuge in Norway. That is what happened back in 1991. And at the time he flew, that was the time when the clamour for multipartyism was gaining traction in Kenya. And that's when the repealing of Section 2 of the Constitution was in top gear, with cause for multipartyism to be allowed in this country. And in 1992, he returned from Norway when Section 2 of the Constitution was repealed to allow multipartyism, and he vied for a member for elective position, Langata, on a party that we call the Forum for the Restoration of Democracy, that is for the Kenya. And so, apart from KANU, this party has managed to withstand, you know, a lot of political instability, and it is still going, though not as strong as it was back in 1990s. In 1996, he comes from Ford Kenya to the National Development Party, NDP. There was a lot of haggling in terms of leadership in Ford Kenya. And he decamped from the National or Ford Kenya to National Development Party. That was it back in 1996. And in 1997, he vies for the presidency on an NDP party for the first time. So 1997 marked the beginning of Raila's stab on the presidency. How did he perform? We are about to unveil the data right now. And this is what was reported by the Electoral Commission. There were three candidates, or what would you call the three main candidates, and we had Daniel Arap Moi, the president back then, who was vying on a KANU ticket, and he managed to garner 2.445 million votes, which was about 40% of all total votes cast. Mwai Kibaki was second, vying on a DP ticket, or Democratic Party, who managed to get 1.89 million votes, or 31.09% of all the total votes that were cast back then. Raila Odinga was third on an NDP ticket, garnering 665,725 votes, which was about 10.92%. If you were to round it off, that comes to around 11% of all the total votes cast. And there were other candidates, Michael Wamalwa Kijana the late, who was vying on a Ford Kenya ticket. He managed to garner 505,000 votes, which was about 8.293%. And Charity Ngilu, we all remember the clarion call for Mama Ngilu, Masani Ngilu. That tells you how old I am. And there has been argument that if all the candidates, who are gunning for presidency back then, they came together, they would have managed to trounce President Daniel Arap Moi. Unfortunately, they never succeeded. Let's keep going. And in 2001, Raila Odinga joined the Moi's cabinet as energy minister. Remember, this was a time when the country was going through a turbulent time in terms of energy, because number one, the country had gone through a phase of prolonged drought, and so we didn't have enough energy in the country. And remember, back then, almost 90% of Kenya's energy was generated from hydro, and so the country was going through a serious energy phase. A lot of industries were running on what you'd call they were running on generators and so much, and so it was a painful moment for the economy. And in 2002, he was promoted and became the KANU Secretary General. He succeeded Joseph Kamotho, the late. And in 2002, he forms the LDP, joins hands with the National Rainbow Coalition. How did they fall out with KANU? Remember, President Daniel Arap Moi, he chose the current president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, to be the flag bearer of KANU in the 2002 elections, and this is when they fell out in KANU, or with KANU. Let's keep going. And in 2002, NARC wins the presidential election. Mwai Kibaki becomes the president of the Republic of Kenya, and he was the third. And we all remember the Kibaki Tosha declaration at the famous Uhuru Park, which is now under renovation. In 2003, he was named the Minister for Roads Development. And one of the things that Raila Odinga managed to do was to try and revive a number of policies on road development, especially in Nairobi. And one of his key achievements was the construction of various bypasses here in Nairobi. And we all remember how buildings were demolished back in the year 2003, 2004 to pave way for the construction of the bypasses that we see here in Nairobi. It was also part of his plan for the expansion of Thika Superhighway. We see it, and that was also part of what was part of his development agenda when he was the Minister for Roads. In 2006, NARC is dissolved. We all know the reason why. It was because Raila Odinga and his brigade, they fell out with Mwai Kibaki over constitution review, and we all remember the banana and orange divide. So NARC was dissolved in 2006, and still in 2006, he formed the Orange Democratic Movement. 2007, he vied for the presidency on an ODM ticket. That was his second attempt. How did he perform? We say in business that numbers do not lie. And this is how it went down. That was according to the Electoral Commission. President Mwai Kibaki, the former, who was vying on a party of national unity, managed to garner 4.58 million votes, which was about 46.04% of total votes cast. And Raila Odinga was closely second, managing to garner 4.35% or 44.1%. And we all remember that these numbers were hotly contested, leading to the infamous post-election violence that birthed the coalition government. That was quite a very tough moment for the Kenyan economy, because for the first time, the Kenyan economy dropped from a growth of 7.1% in the previous year, that was in 2007, to 1.7% in 2008. That was a terrible showing for the Kenyan economy. And in 2008, Raila Odinga is sworn in as the Prime Minister, and we all remember that a handshake moment outside Harambee House between Raila Odinga and the former President Mwai Kibaki, which of course was brokered by Kofi Annan, the late, who was the UN Secretary General, quite an Pan-Africanist there. And in 2012, he joins hands with the Coalition for the Reforms and Democracy. And one thing that we ought to remember is that between 2008 and 2012, the coalition government was rocked by various in-house fightings. And in 2012, he joined hands with Coalition for Reforms and Democracy. And in 2013, he vied for the presidency on a court ticket where he emerged second, and that was his third attempt on the presidency. And how did he manage to perform? We all know he came second. In 2017, he joins hands with Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula to form the National Super Alliance, also known as NASA. And in 2017, he vied for the presidency on a NASA ticket. Well, the votes were contested. They went to the Supreme Court, and in 2017, for the first time in the history of Africa, the Supreme Court annulled the presidential election, urging the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to do a repeat of the presidential election. In 2017, the same year, Raila Odinga withdrew from the scheduled re-election, saying that the ground was not even, and we all remember their clarion call was the irreducible minimums. The IEBC had to deal with that, and that was the elephant in the room where he withdrew from the race. In 2018, we remember the People's President, as he was referred to then, he was sworn in as the People's President at Uhuru Park. And that did not last for too long. He managed to shake hands with President Uhuru Kenyatta.